Welcome back, csc103, to our pear-apple scene. And this should be the last part. And what we're going to do is just put some background and kind of set up our scene to nicely render it. We have our fruit done. If we render it now, you can see we have a nice looking pear and apple image. Our camera's a little bit off, but that's okay. But now we're going to put a floor here and just put some background behind it. So I'm going to go back to my 3D view, and I'm just going to back up a little bit, and I'll just adjust my scene. And again, I have it set up so that my camera's kind of facing that, which is good. I'll zoom in a little bit, and I'm going to add a mesh plane. Now, when you do that, we're going to need to scale it. You could try hitting your S key and just kind of making it look like a big floor, and then left click when you're done. And then I'm going to move it down kind of where it just about hits the bottom of the fruit, and I'll move it into place. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect because we're going to put a wall here and a wall over here. So let's just render and see what we have so far. And you can see there's the corner. So that, you know, once we move up, we'll see more of that. But that's okay. Everything looks good. And I'll go back to my 3D view. And we're going to add a texture to this. So I'm going to right click where it is already selected. And same thing, same process. Just go to Materials. You don't have to give it any color. If you want to give it an off-white or something because it makes you feel better, that's fine. And then I'll go to Texture. And again, if you don't see anything, scroll up, hit New, go down to Open. And I'm going to do this one called Parquet Floor. I don't think that's spelled right because I think it uses a Q and a U. But anyway, I'm going to use Parquet Floor. And again, it's a floor. I know it's kind of a counter, but anyway, that's what we have. And there it is. And I'm also going to go down to where it has UV, and I'll just make Generate it. And I could leave it flat since it's a plane, and I'll render it, see what I have. And that looks pretty good. Now, if the planks look really big, because maybe it's more of a counter and you don't want the plank so big, you could do this. You could scroll up on your, well, let's see, scroll down here, and where it has size, if you increase the size, basically reduce the texture. It's kind of the opposite, if that makes sense. So if I go in here and I make this 2, and I'll just hit tab 2, tab 2, and I hit enter, and I rendered it again, my planks should look a little smaller, and that's kind of what I want. So that's probably pretty good there. I don't need any geometry. I don't want any texture. I want to keep it smooth, and that's fine. What I have right now is fine. And I'll go back to my 3D view, and I'll add another plane, except we're going to rotate it. So let me just add my plane, add mesh plane, and there it is. I'll hit scale, make it a little bigger, and I'm going to rotate it. So it has to rotate up, so it's standing up. So you could use this thing here. What I recommend that's a little bit easier, if you go over to where it has the cube here, it gives you properties, and here's rotation. And what I'll do is I'll rotate it on its, I guess this will be on its y-axis. If you don't know, just start doing it. And I'm actually going to put it up to like 90. And I'll just type in 90. And that's actually what I want. That's perfect. And the other ones could stay 0, and then I'm actually going to scale it in either direction. So it's almost as long as that, and it doesn't matter if it cuts through the bottom of that or not. And I'm going to go back to my arrow down here. That way I'm just going to move it back a little bit. And I'll move it up a little bit. And that's good for now. If I want to view it from the front, I'll move it down so it's kind of right on the grid, and that's pretty good. So that's kind of what I want. And the next thing I'll do is I'll put a texture on it. So I'll do the same thing while it's selected, and I'm going to go to Material, add New Material. I'm just going to leave it alone. I won't put anything on it. I'll go to Texture, scroll up, hit New, and go down to the Open button. And this time I'm going to use the one that says Tile to Texture. And I'll hit Open Image. And I'll do the same thing. I'll scroll down, and I'll make this Generate it, and I'll leave it flat. And when I render it, well, it's hard to see it, but the tiles are actually a little big. And one thing I might do right now, since I'm trying to see the tile a little better, I'll go over here to 3D View, and I'll go to View Camera, and there's my view. Now if I want to change that view a little bit, I could go over here and click on my camera in my outliner. That's called the outliner, this area where you see all the things in your scene. And if you click on the movie camera, they have a shift here where you can kind of shift the Y up a little bit. I'm just going to shift it up a little bit, and you could also move the X a little bit, and then they even have the focal length that you can kind of zoom in and zoom out a little bit. So whatever you need to do there. So that looks okay. Maybe I'll go up a little more so I see a little more of my tile. And I'll render it one more time. And you can see these look a little big, so I'm going to make them smaller. And the way I do that, I'll just go back to 3D view. I'll right click on my plane here, and I'll go in my texture. And size, I'll do the same thing, except this time I'll highlight on the 1 and just do 3 and hit tab 3, tab 3. And then I'll hit enter. And now they're a lot smaller. And then another thing I could do, I could even go down and click on geometry, and that'll give a little more texture to it. You should see a little more bump. Now I don't want a lot, but that's okay. Maybe I'll do half that. It's at 1, maybe I'll do like 0.5 or something. And I'll render that. And there you see how I have some texture in there. That looks good, I think. And I'll zoom out a little bit. Now what I'll do next is I'll go back to 3D view. Instead of doing this process all over again, and I'll kind of click in here and move with my scroll wheel. Now I'm going to duplicate this, and I could do that just by going right here to duplicate, and I'll put it right where the other one was. Now this time it's going to rotate on the Z-axis. That's the Z-axis, so it's going to rotate kind of the other way. So I can go to this cube. You have to go to the cube, and it's going to rotate on the Z, and I'll just try 90 and see how that looks. And then I'll move it, and it might have to go down a little bit because I want to keep it even. I'll hold shift here. I want to keep it even with the others so the tiles line up. And that looks okay. Now it doesn't matter if it's overlapping, because remember our scene is only seeing this little area here. So we just kind of like have a fake little scene set up here, just like a TV set. And I'll do render, and that looks okay. And the only problem we have right now is that it's a little dark. You know, it's like we have a night light on or something. Now you can make the lamp brighter, but what I'm going to do is just put another light over here, and I'll go back to my scene to check out my light. There's my light, and it's actually a little high, so maybe I'll left click on it, move it down a little bit, and then while I'm on it I could duplicate it, and I'll just left click to OK it, and then I'll move my light like over here and move it down a little bit so I get some light on the other side here. And I can even move it down so it kind of backlights the bottom of the fruit a little bit better. And you don't know until you do it, so let me try it out. And that looks a little better. Now we have some light down here. The fruit looks a little more defined. You know, we still have shadows, and that's okay. Nothing wrong with that, but it's a nice little scene here considering we started with nothing and we built this out of, you know, meshes, 3D meshes. I think this is pretty cool. So that's kind of a nice scene. So I think we're, you know, it's not perfect. We have some angles here. We could smooth those out more if we wanted to, but it's a pretty nice scene here. So I'm gonna save this. I'll go back to 3D view, and I'll save my Blender file. And if you need your Blender file, that's the one. And if you want to save your render, just render it again. And there it is. And if you need to change your camera, zoom in and zoom out, whatever you need to do, but I'm going to render this. And once I render it, I'll go down to image, and I'll do save as image. And I guess I'll put it in here because this is where I kept my other file. Let me go to desktop, 3D textures. I think I put my Blender file in here, and I'll just call it pear-apple-scene. Doesn't matter what you call it really. And I'll save it in here. And I saved that as an image, and then when you go back to your coursework, you could go in here and add a comment and do insert image and just go find it. You have to go through this thing. You have to go to upload. I'll go to desktop. I'll go into my textures. Hopefully that's where my pear-apple scene is. There it is. I'll open it. I'll insert it. And even if you want to change the size here to like 500, so it's a little bit smaller, you could do that. This will change afterwards, so you don't have to even change the 540. Just change the first one. And just hit OK. And there it is. It's highlighted. That's why it looks blue. If you click off it, there's your image. So then I could go right into your project and see the picture that you generated. And I'll hit save. And there it is. And that's the way you submit your file. So that looks pretty nice, and that didn't take very long. It took maybe, I don't know, maybe 15 minutes for the pear, 50 less for the apple, and maybe another 10 minutes for the background stuff. So that's our pear apple scene using Blender 3D.